Welcome to class. We have gotten a lot of good instruction on writing in Chapter 1, and now, of course, we are working with Chapter 2, and that is the reviewing of the 8 parts of speech. We will get right into pronouns in just a bit, but let me open class up with a scripture verse. This is from Psalm 28, and it is verse 7. The Lord is my strength and my shield. My heart trusted in him, and I am helped. Therefore my heart greatly rejoiceth, and with my song I will praise him. The Lord is my strength and my shield. Think about that for a little bit. When I first started thinking about how the Lord is my shield, I think about the qualities of a shield. This is, if you have had any kind of a literature class that talks about metaphors, this is a metaphor. It is a comparison. The Lord is my shield. So, to find out, to make the comparison work, what are the qualities of a shield? Why is the psalmist saying the Lord is my shield? Well, what about a shield? If any kind of a blow in warfare, and many of the Psalms written by David do have warfare imagery because he was a warrior. But if any kind of a blow actually went through and hit the person, you know, a person has a shield, carrying a shield, but a blow got to the person behind the shield, guess what? That blow had to go through the shield first. So for the Lord to be my shield, any problem or anything that I have, he felt it first. And he buffers away a lot for me too. That's just a blessing to my heart. And I hope that will be a blessing to your heart at the same time. So let's continue now. You had to deal with the nouns. We talked about nouns. And we introduced pronouns. And I said here are the various types of pronouns. And I said for you to get started with the personal pronouns. Now, on page 37 there is a purple chart. It says singular and plural. And those pronouns are all in this one personal pronoun chart. You need to learn that. I had you to get started on learning it, but eventually you're going to have to know it all. So just to make you aware of that, now let's break down and talk about the different parts. Are you ready? Do you have your textbook open, ready to go? Chapter 2? Do you have pencil, pen, paper? Let's begin by talking about personal pronouns. Now, there are 4 aspects of the personal pronouns. One is the person, who the person is. And by that I mean, is it the first person, which is the person doing the speaking, I, me, we, or is it the second person, the person being spoken to, and that is you? Or is it perhaps the third person, the person being spoken about, the he, she, them, all of those, it, the thing being spoken about. So there are 3 persons. Now, in addition to the persons, there's the number. Is it singular or plural? And that's pretty basic, you know that. He versus they. And then there's gender, you know this also, masculine, feminine, or neuter. And that only applies to third person. Is it he, is it she, or is it it? And then case. And that is how it's used in this sentence depending upon the function. All right, case. We will spend more time discussing case later on in the class as we get through the textbook, and there's a chapter on pronoun usage. There's a chapter on pronoun references, reference problems, which are perhaps some of the biggest problems made in speech and in writing. And then there's pronoun usage. I'm just getting you ready for this. That's why I need you to know the personal pronoun chart, because the case that they're in makes a difference with how it functions later on. For instance, you use a different case, I use a different case for a pronoun in a direct object position than you do in a predicate noun position. They're both after the verb, but they're not the same case. So what do I mean by case? All right, well, let's go back and look. By case, I mean either subjective, and they will be used as subjects or predicate nouns, or objective, and that's anything with the word object in it. All right, direct object, indirect object, object of a preposition, or objective complement. And of course then possessive, which in most cases are adjective, but not in all of the cases. Now if you want to, above that chart on page 37 where it has the subjective and the objective and the possessive, if you want to just kind of pause the program and then rewind a little bit and write how these are used. You know, it says subjective. All right, you draw a little arrow and write subjects, predicate nouns. And then it says objective, and you draw a little arrow and put the abbreviation for direct object, DOs, IOs, OPs, objects of preps, and OCs, objective complements. You may not even remember or know what an objective complement is. That's okay. We'll get to that next chapter. Just write this down. I'm not expecting you necessarily right now to understand all this. All right? We're just working with the basics, the foundation. Remember that building? We have all the parts of speech, and then we work up the columns and the roof. All right, so we're just getting there. Just learn this information. Put in the categories in your brain. Subjective means this. Objective means this. We'll get to the how we use it later, but you can't learn how you use it until you use it, right? Finding prepositional phrases in sentences, they're difficult if you don't know prepositions. Once you know prepositions, though, and the fact that you're looking for the prep and the object, finding prepositional phrases is a cinch. So you have to have that basic foundation first, and that's what this chapter is. Then, of course, under possessives, if you want to draw a little arrow and put usually adjectives, and not always. I can say something like, this Bible is mine. Mine is not an adjective there. It's a predicate noun, predicate pronoun. But, there are some times when they're not used as adjectives, but in most cases they are. So we're working our way through the personal, just knowledge basis. I'm not putting them in any sentences. I'm not making you check on their cases yet, but learn the information. And as I mentioned, on page 37, you have this chart that you need to learn. I've abbreviated. This is the singular chart. In the first person, you have I in subjective, me in objective, my and mine in possessive. In the second person, whoa, nice and easy, right? You, and your and yours, which makes sense in the possessive. Third person, in your neuter, it's it, and its. And then, of course, masculine is he, him, and his, and feminine, she, her, and her or hers. Now, of course, in the plural part of the chart, in the first person, we have we, us, our, and ours. Second person is the same, which is nice, you, your, and yours. And third person, no matter what, is going to be they, them, their, or theirs. Now, occasionally when you add the relative pronouns, you have to know their cases also. They're not personal, but they do have cases. Who is subjective, whom is objective, and whose is possessive. So if you wish to write those particular ones in under the chart, just put relative pronoun out to the side, and under subjective put who, and under objective put whom, and under possessive put whose. When we use them, they are used in dependent clauses, which are little sentences, and so depending on how they're used in that little clause, subject, direct object, that's how we make our choices. Again, we will get to that. Don't worry about it. You're just learning foundation, so get your information. What about the rest of some of these pronouns? Let's talk about the indefinite pronouns. Indefinite pronouns. They refer to non-specific persons, places, or things. Okay, such as, well, they're usually written without antecedents, and then they have singular, plural, or either usage, meaning some of them can be singular or plural depending on how they're used in the sentence. Let me give you some examples of these. Of course, all of the examples are in your textbook. Each of the choir had an opportunity to sing a solo part. Each is my indefinite pronoun. Now, is it singular or plural? Right? This is indefinite, and I tell that it's singular because I'm talking about a solo. Actually, it's like each member. There's one member, so each. Now look at this one. Most of them chose not to sing his solo part. Well, the problem here is that most refers to more than one. Most is plural. So what do I do? Well, there's my them. What do? Them is personal, so I'll just mark it, but it helps to help with the most. His, well, that doesn't agree, does it? Even though it's personal, but it doesn't agree. It should be there. It matches with them. But then there's something else here I need to correct too, isn't there? Yes, I have to change the part to parts. Now, I do not expect you at this point to know the difference between which one's singular, which one's plural, and which one's can be either. We will get to that, and it'll be chapters down the road. Right now, I just want you to be familiar with the types of words that make up indefinite pronouns. Yes, you will have them on a quiz, and yes, you will need to recognize them on the test, too. They are at the bottom of page 37 in a nice kind of brownish tan box at the bottom, okay? So there they are, all of the bodies and ones. Everybody, somebody, anyone, everyone, those are all indefinite pronouns. So look at them, be familiar with them, and learn them. Know them as indefinite pronouns. If you want to just look at it and say, okay, which one are singulars, which one's singular, which one's plural, on page 161, and there's a little icon off to the right side of your page that tells you, on pages 161 and 162, I think it is, it will tell you and have them listed according to the singular, plural, or the either, but we'll get to that eventually. Let's keep moving on. We did personal. You need to be familiar with, these pronouns are under the personal category. Indefinite, these pronouns are indefinite. Let's look at the next grouping. And we have demonstrative pronouns. There's the page given there for you. Demonstrative pronouns demonstrate. So let that help you. They demonstrate or they show specific persons, places, things, or ideas. And there's only 4, and they all start with T's. Actually, THs. Let that help you. This, that, those, and these. Let's look at some. This is the only choir robe that Chad has. That is my best pair of dress shoes. Those dress shoes are my best ones. All demonstrative. Now this one is a demonstrative pronoun because it's taking the place of the noun or the subject in the sentence. And there's another, that Chad has. There's a that, again, taking the place of the noun, which is the subject. Notice this one though, those. This is not taking the place of a noun, it's actually going to modify which shoes. So in this case, it's a demonstrative adjective, pronoun used as an adjective. But they're all, if you see them in sentences that you have to identify for this test, they're demonstrative pronouns. Okay, see that X? We underlined the that I said earlier. This one you may think is a demonstrative pronoun, but it's not used that way. This one is used as another type of pronoun. What we're going to do is, and we're going to lead you into that next type of pronoun. Remember when I mentioned to you about relatives and how relative pronouns work within little sentences? Well, a that can also be used as a relative pronoun. I need you to think in terms of the English language. In the English language, function in the sentence is what's important. So you can have the same word used in several different ways in several different sentences. We label it according to its function. Same word that, but depending on how it's used, it can either be a demonstrative pronoun or it can be a relative pronoun. Let's look at relative pronouns. A relative pronoun begins a dependent clause. Now, if you are not familiar with what a dependent clause is, just think in terms of little sentences within bigger sentences, within bigger clauses, all right? And there are only 5. Who, whom, whose, which, and that. Of course, some of them can be, kind of considered indefinite because we add the ever, whoever, whomever, but that's minor. Remember what I said about these relative pronouns, the who, whom, and the whose also fall into cases, which we'll come back to. Just get all the knowledge you can, all the foundational knowledge. She is the one who is playing the piano for my solo. All right, let's look at the pronouns. All right, find the pronouns. I'll wait a little bit. You locate the pronouns. How many did you find? Did you find 4? You should have. All right, who? You see that who? That's definitely going to be a relative pronoun. See, who is? It's a new subject verb, a new little sentence. See that she is earlier? That's another sentence. So we have two sentences here. Right? So it's a relative pronoun. What other pronouns do you see? She, most definitely. What is that? Well, it's personal. Next pronoun? One. And we already went over those. Does it have a TH on it? No, so it's not demonstrative. It's not personal. It's not one of the 5 relative. Guess what? It's indefinite. And there is one more. Did you catch it? My. This is a possessive personal pronoun. So how are you doing? Remember, right now you're just focusing on there are these types of pronouns and here are examples. All right, so let me ask you. Let's do a little bit of review. What are some personal pronouns? Can you name some? Think. These are the ones we think of when we think of pronouns. I, he, she, it, they, them, you, we. Okay, good. What are some indefinite pronouns? Any of the ones and bodies, and each, and most, and any, and all. Okay, good. What are all of the demonstrative pronouns? How many are there? There are only, and they all begin with, okay, so we have this, that, those, and these. Great. And then we discussed relative pronouns. And how many of our relative pronouns? How many of them? Great. There are 5. And most of them begin with WHs, with one exception. So we have who, whom, whose, which, and that. Great. All right. That's what you need to know for the tests. Well, we have some more pronouns. Let's go over them. Interrogative pronouns, right? Interrogative. Remember with sentences, you have factual sentences, declarative, and then you have interrogative. So what do? They ask questions. There are only 5, and they're all W's, and you've seen these before. But again, it depends on how it's used in the sentence. So who, whom, whose, which, and what are all interrogative pronouns. Well, let's look. Who actually is singing the solo on Sunday? Is singing is my verb. My subject is who. And there's a question. So that's an interrogative pronoun. Which solo will you be singing? Right? Which is definitely interrogative. I'm asking a question with this one. It's an interrogative, but it's also used as an adjective here. It's still considered interrogative. And you is, of course, a personal pronoun. So we have those. Again, a couple things to keep in mind. I do right now want you to be able to label types. But you do have to use a little bit of function here, right? I'm not, going over sentence patterns or functions, but in order to tell the difference between whether the who is interrogative or relative, you have to know function. Well, that one's not too hard. Is it a question? It's a who involved with a question? Well, it's probably interrogative. If there's no question mark and you have a who, it's probably relative. Now, of course, with relatives, the who or the whom will be somewhere right in front of another verb. Right? It's a little sentence within a bigger sentence. So we'll have 2 subject-verb combinations in there somewhere. And if you know your subject-verb combinations, you can look at that and double-check to see if it's a relative. But if you have a difficult time with dependent clauses or whatever, then look for that question mark to eliminate interrogative and go straight to what? Relative. But that's a little bit more confusing, but it works the same way. If the that is right in front of another verb and you have at least 2 different subject-verb combinations, then it's going to be relative. Otherwise, you're just going to have a demonstrative. So you have to be thinking. You have to first memorize, here are the types, here are the examples, and then you have to kind of be thinking through how it's used in the sentence, and you can do this. Spend a little time studying, right? Let's continue with our pronouns. Then we have reflexive and intensive pronouns. These are the ones that simply have self or selves for endings. And they are different in their sentence function. I mean, like you can have a himself that is used in a reflexive sense or himself that is used in an intensive sense. So there are differences. The soloist himself will be blessed by the hymn. The soloist himself. See, that right there is intensive. It's like I'm making a point. Soloist himself comes right after the noun that it's renaming. It's intensive, like think intensifying the concept. The soloist decided by himself which hymn he wanted to sing. See that? It's not right after the noun it renames. There's a verb after it, it's an object of a prep. Okay, that is not intensive. That is reflexive. It kind of reflects back to the noun. And then, of course, there is another pronoun there. See that he? Well, that is simply a personal pronoun. Right. Let's look at another one. The soloist decided by himself which hymn he wanted to sing. Oh, well, it's the same sentence, but I want to make a point here, right? Okay, let's look. I have my subject and my verb. Soloist decided. Even if you do not know what TR stands for or you don't remember transitive, doesn't matter. Just go with subject and verb. Now, do you see there's another subject-verb combination in there? See that? He wanted. All right, now is there a WH word in there somewhere in front of one of the subject-verb combinations? See that which? I mean, I know there's a him there, but still the which is in front of the second subject-verb combination. All right, so what do we have? Oh, we have a relative pronouns. Relative pronouns are used in little sentences in front of the second subject-verb combination, or what we call a dependent clause. Now, one more type of pronouns. Reciprocal pronouns. They express a mutual relationship, and there are only two of them. Each other is one. I know it's two words, but it's considered one pronoun. And one another. The choir members encouraged each other in the Lord, and they gave encouragement to one another. Those are both reciprocal pronouns. So, if you need a review, a summary of the definitions is given on page 39. When you study for your quizzes or tests and you just kind of want to go over and get it gel in your mind, page 39 at the bottom is an in summary, which, by the way, if you haven't noticed the in summary thus far, and this is actually one of the first we worked with, every so often in each of the chapters, the textbook will stop and it will kind of summarize mostly the definitions of terms we have talked about. So this in summary gives you the definition of nouns, goes through the difference between compound and proper and collective and all this, and then it gets into pronouns, gives the definition, and then it goes into the different types of pronouns and talks about them. For instance, it says demonstrative pronouns point out person, place, things. And I use the word what? Demonstrative, they demonstrate or show. It helps you. So nice little in summary. I will not mention these in summaries very often, but hey, you're an 11th grader. You know it's there. You can use it if you need it. Now, one of the things that I have mentioned several times throughout this particular lesson is the fact that in the English language, how the word functions in the sentence is the way we label it. You can have the same word that can be labeled. It can function 3 different sentences, 3 different ways, and we're labeling it 3 different things. Now, there are other languages that it doesn't matter the function or even the order of the word. No matter where you put that particular word in a sentence, it always means the same thing. It's always going to be the noun. It just doesn't matter where you put it. And every language, each language has different characteristics. With English, function and order makes the difference. Okay? So, well, let me show you what I mean by this. All right, so let's look at the word toy. I bought the cutest toy for my wonderful nephews. Let me see that toy dog. They toy freely with people's emotions. Who, the toy dog? Oh, I don't know, but move on. All right, let's look at these words. See that first toy? I brought the cutest toy. What did I buy? Toy. It's a what? Then I have, let me see that toy dog. I bought the dog, but what kind of dog is it? It's a toy dog. And then I say, they toy freely. Right? There's some action going on there. Well, the first one is a noun. It's the same word, but in this case it's used as a noun. That's its function. In the second sentence, I have the same word, but it's used as an adjective, describing the noun dog. That's its function. In the third sentence, I have the same word, but this time it's used as a verb. That's its function. Now, as we get to the next chapter, I will help you be able to take all these parts of speech that we are reviewing and put them into certain orders that will help you easily determine function. So if you feel like you're getting lost in this sea here, don't even panic. Right now, just learn these are the types of pronouns, these are examples. Even if you can't find them in sentences, you may miss a few points on the test, that's true, but don't panic. I will help you get there in chapter 3 and following. So we will get there and give you great tools to use for how to find function. But right now, let's listen into a couple of friends as they discuss this idea of function.
What are you gonna get?
I'm definitely going to get the ice cream.
Me too, except there's so many different kinds of flavors. I have a hard time deciding what I want.
Kind of like how you had such a hard time deciding whether to wear the blue shirt or the cream shirt last week.
Okay, but that was a very important decision.
Right.
Hey, Matt.
Hey, Matt.
Oh, we had a good practice. That was a workout.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you think you're gonna win your game tomorrow?
We're gonna cream them. I mean, our shots are good. Our passing was smooth.
Wait, cream? What is with that word today?
What?
It's just that we've used that word 3 times already, and in 3 different parts of speech. Ice cream, a noun, and the cream shirt, an adjective, and we're going to cream them in the game, verb. That was such a great verb.
Yeah, leave it to the writer. You think of the weirdest things.
What's weird? You like to use numbers and math, and I like to use words.
You know, I'm glad you guys thought about how the word cream has different functions.
Really?
Yeah, the whole idea about things having different functions, it reminds me of how I, as a Christian, need to be sure that I'm functioning.
Well, what do you mean?
Well, okay, when I'm at church, it's not hard to function like a Christian. But when I'm on the basketball court, sometimes it's a little harder to remember to function like a Christian.
I understand what you mean, Matt. No matter where we are or what we're doing, others should be able to tell that we're Christians by the way we act.
Yeah.
Kind of like how I can tell the function of a word by the way it acts in a sentence.
Right.
And Christians should act in a Christ-like way, even when we're pressured to function differently.
Yeah.
Good point, Matt, about functioning. Something for us to remember. Okay, let's go on and talk about our next part of speech, which in my opinion is probably the most important part of speech, in grammar and in writing. I'm going to give you 2 definitions, write these both down, and then I'll tell you which one to focus on, all right? What is the verb? Well, it is the main word or words in the predicate, and often the most important word or words in the sentence. Okay, if you need more time, pause it. Let me give you the second definition. It expresses action or state of being. And by that I mean being or linking. A verb expresses action or state of being, meaning being or linking. You will be happy to know that it is the second definition that I want you to focus on. In summary, which is on page 43 in your textbook, that's the definition that it kind of focuses in. So action, being, state of being. Let's get some more information about verbs in general. All right, verb types. There is the action verb with examples like leap, catch, race. And then there are being verbs. There are 8 of those, and you need to know those. Can you say them really fast? Am, is, are, was, were, be, being, been? You need to know them from memory that quickly. And then there are the linking verbs, which include the 8 being verbs, and then 11 others. Stay, appear, remain, grow, become, seem, smell, sound, taste, feel, and look. And then, of course, we have what is called the auxiliary or helping verb. Those being verbs can also be helping verbs, those 8 ones. And then any forms of the will, which would be would, shall, may, can, do, like do or did, can and could, any of those. Now, the being and the linking verbs together, for our purposes in this chapter, are called the state of being verbs. I cannot stress to you enough that you need to know these verbs. I know you know action, you can figure that one out, but linking verbs, those 11 linking verbs, and the being verbs specifically, you need to memorize those. You cannot just kind of flip over them in the sentence and miss them. You're going to die in the next chapter if you do. So learn those. What's your assignment for this evening? Practice the skill 2.3, page 44. And use the skill 2.4 on pages 44 and 45. Only do numbers 1 through 2, 4, and 7 through 9.